It's a great day. My name is Che Brown, the Happy Entrepreneur, and welcome to the Happy Entrepreneur Show, the #1 business development and revenue-focused late-night show in the country, where we're on a mission, by the way. And our mission really is to empower, our mission is to inspire, and our mission is to provide you, the entrepreneur, with all of the resources that are necessary to execute that big vision you have for the people you were called to serve. And on this call, we have the one and only Nselaa. Did I get it right, Nselaa?
You got it right, baby.
Madam Nselaa, who's in the building. And
Yes.
she'll be talking about getting paid to speak at colleges and universities. But here's the key. It's a must for entrepreneurs. Got to figure that out. What's going on? How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here with you. I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited to be here with you as well. For all the entrepreneurs who are leaning in because they're looking and saying a must for entrepreneurs, take a moment if you can. And I'm curious, why are entrepreneurs today struggling? Those folks that want to speak as part of their business, why are they struggling these days to really speak at colleges and universities? I mean, it sounds like they have all the information. They know what they're doing. So why are they struggling to get an opportunity to speak at colleges and universities?
That's a really good question, Chase. So I think it's bigger that, a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners are struggling in general, to be very honest. It's not even just struggling to be able to speak at colleges and universities. They're struggling to get gigs. They're struggling to get revenue. They're struggling to build a business. They're struggling to get exposure. And what I've seen in my background is that what has happened is that there's no longer a gatekeeper, right, to the industry, and that's a good thing, right? It has its perks to it, but similar to the music industry, where a lot of times in the past, right, what would happen is that in order to be able to have a career as a musician or an artist, they would have to go through a record label, and then that record label would help them to build their career, right? So since we got social media, people don't have to go through that gatekeeper anymore. They can get exposure to their audiences without going through a record label. Businesses and speakers have the same obstacles, right? So in the past, they used to have to go through a gatekeeper. Now they don't have to go through a gatekeeper anymore. So anybody can start a business and anybody can be a speaker. And then, like I said, that has, benefits, but it also has its own unique set of challenges because everybody can be a speaker, everybody can be a business owner, everybody can be an entrepreneur. There's this plethora, right, of experts and influencers and advisors and people that are saying that they are the best at whatever they do. And what this has done to the general public is that it's put them in a position where they don't know who they can trust anymore. They don't know who is legitimate, who is real, and who's going to really be able to help them. And when people get confused, they stop, they freeze. And when you're talking about the entrepreneur pipeline, right? When people freeze, that means that they're not buying, right? They don't support anybody's services because they don't know who's legitimate anymore. So the #1 reason that I see a lot of times that small businesses and speakers are struggling in their business is because they don't have anything that's really setting them apart from the rest of the experts and the influencers and the advisors and the consultants out there, right? So that's the #1 thing. And two, they really don't know how to tap into their super fans database.
Superfans database. When people hear the word superfans database, they're wondering, what is a superfan these days? I mean, I know it's going to sound elementary, but for folks that are watching, they're leaning in saying, what's her definition? What's her view of the world of a superfan? Is it someone that's hitting my like button on a consistent basis? Is it someone that's following me on all my platforms? Take a moment if you can and give us your view of the world on what is a superfan?
Okay, absolutely. So in order to kind of give you that, explanation, I kind of have to back up a little bit so I can tell you, what it is that we do so you understand why we're even talking about superfans in the first place, right? So while I
Perfect.
am a talent agent for speakers, right, Ni Nava Associates is not necessarily your traditional or your stereotypical talent agency or speakers bureau. And that's actually on purpose, right? Because even before I became an attorney, before I transitioned into business architecture, I was an artist. I was a speaker. I was on the road myself. So I was a spoken word artist. So I literally performed for over 10 years at colleges and universities and gigs around the country full time before I even got into law. So I know what the speaking industry is like, and I know what the artist industry is like. And when I created my law firm initially, I created it because I knew that there was a hole that needed to be filled. A lot of entrepreneurs and speakers out here doing everything themselves. They do everything in their business independently. And they feel like all they need is for somebody to just discover them, right? Or they need a talent agency to just put them out there, or they need a speakers bureau to just expose them to all these opportunities. And then everything is going to flow like water. And in reality, that's not really how it works, right? Because when you only have that talent agent or you only have that speakers bureau, first of all, a lot of times what speakers bureaus do is they just put you on a website. They have you on a website with 1,000 other speakers. And then they're basically like, whoever gets booked, that's where we're going to make our revenue in. Right? So you're on this endless website of death and nobody ever sees you, right? A lot of times what's happening is that the only thing they're going to do is try to get you a gig. So you might get one gig, maybe you might even get lucky enough to get 2 or 3 gigs, but what are you going to do after that, right? These gigs, and for speakers, a lot of times they might be $500. A good gig is considered $5,000. But even after that $5,000 gig, what are you going to do for the rest of the year? Even if you get a $50,000 gig, what are you going to do for the rest of the year? That's few and far between, right? So when you're looking for a talent agent or a speakers bureau, what that does is that puts you in the position where you have to still do all the other jobs yourself. That means you have to be your marketer. That means you have to be your press manager. That means that you have to be your business manager. You have to be your chief marketing officer. You have to be your chief operating officer. You have to be your chief financial officer. You have to be your attorney. You have to be your administrative assistant. You have to be the person to answer the phone. You have 20 other jobs that you're trying to be while you're also trying to be a speaker or an entrepreneur or an artist. And when you're trying to do all these 20 different jobs, which require literally, 40 hours each independently, some of them require 80 and 120 hours, you end up being mediocre at everything. Right. And a lot of times you're not even making any type of revenue in the first place because the things you're focusing on are the things that excites you the most. And that might not necessarily be what's bringing in revenue for you. Right. When I was just on the speaking circuit before I became an attorney, I actually initially went to a large agency. And when I say large agency, like they literally had thousands of artists and thousands of entertainers. And it wasn't even just speakers. It was movie stars. I mean, they had people like Angelina Jolie, it was singers, it was models, it was huge. And I felt like this was going to be like, this is my end all to be all. I was finally going to get seen. And the first year I was on that, in that talent agency, and I didn't get any bookings. I spent probably about $15,000 just getting all of my stuff together so that I can be prepared to get booked. Didn't get any bookings. Second year, I didn't get any bookings at all. Third year, I still didn't get any bookings. And they sent me a pretty little letter saying, Nselaa, we are grateful that you were our client, but we will be releasing you. And I was devastated. And it wasn't until I started working with a smaller agency that really kind of held my hand and taught me the ropes of what it was that I was putting together. But also they took the time to manage my speaking career as a whole. It wasn't until I got with them that I started to really, really, really be able to take off in my speaking career. I was on the road 300 days out of the year out of that doing college and universities. And the way that they did that was by helping me to be able to find my super fans. And those super fans, those are the ones that love you. They absolutely adore you. They follow you. They do everything that they can to get access to you, but you're not spending enough time to really be able to know who your super fans are. And most people can't, right? Most people can't find their super fans because they're too busy doing all of these other jobs, right? So we focus on making sure that we're not just trying to get you a gig. We're managing our speaker's career 360 degrees, which is really unlike any other speakers bureau or talent agency out there. So that we're not just getting you a gig, but we're building an enterprise behind your speaker's brand and making sure that you have longevity and revenue infinitely and not just that $1,000, $2,500 or $5,000 speaking engagement.
I love it. And I love how you drew the correlation that there's a difference from just being on a website and being featured to really building the business of speaking. And I think you spoke to the importance of the business of speaking. I guess that lends the question to, you say it's a must for every entrepreneur, but you kind of had the tagline, colleges and universities. Take a moment and explain the type of entrepreneurs that are speakers that would want to speak at colleges and universities, or is that just a niche that you just picked for now?
That's a really good question as well. So we particularly focus on college and universities, but that is by design, right? That's not necessarily, because that's just the niche that we decided to work in. So when you're on the college and university market, it gives you a different type of credibility than any other stage can get you. And a lot of times we find entrepreneurs that will overlook the college and university market because they say, my target audience is women over 40, or my target audience is, men, who are married and are unhappy, or my target audience is elderly people, or my target audience is high school students. So, a lot of people come in, initially, and they have these ideas that they really shouldn't focus on the college and university market because that's not necessarily their target audience. However, the reason that we particularly focus on colleges and universities is because this literally is a technique that has been used by scholars all around the world, right? So when I say scholars, it doesn't mean that, you have to have a college degree. It doesn't mean that you have to have gone to an Ivy League university because, we focus on booking at colleges like Ivy League universities like Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Columbia. We focus on those industries, right? But a lot of our speakers don't even have a degree when they come and lecture there, right? So I want you to think about scholars like Brene Brown, right? Or Simon Sinek, or even Cornel West. They used a specific formula in order to be able to build their brand, even though what it is that they talk about is not necessarily specifically targeted at college and university students. So Brene Brown, she aligned herself with the University of Houston in their name, right? Simon Sinek, he aligned himself and lectured at Columbia University. Cornel West, he aligned himself and spoke at Princeton, Yale, Harvard, right? Even though college students were not necessarily any of their target audiences. But when your superfan database are students that went to Harvard and Yale and Princeton and the University of Houston or the University of North Carolina or the University of California, when your target audience is somebody that's different, but the people that are spreading your name are coming from these institutions, it has a different type of credibility and it hits differently. And that's what you use to separate yourself and to distinguish yourself from the other influencers out there, right? Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, Cornel West, they've been around for decades. These influencers, they come and go. You might see them for 2 good years, and then you be like, whatever happened to so-and-so, right? Scholars, they can charge different prices, right? They can go on to any stage they want to go on in the country. They get Netflix platforms, they get television shows because they have branded themselves with these institutions to show that they can be trusted. And that's what's stopping most entrepreneurs' clients right now, is that they don't know who to trust. But when you've aligned yourself with the academic circuit and you set yourself up as a scholar, then the other parts of the business will flow easier as well.
I love that. And well said, well stated, which I like. Let me ask a question before we get to our segment, another segment. For folks that are listening, they're like, okay, I'm picking up what she's putting down. I'm smelling what she's cooking in the kitchen. I love her analogy, Shay, but can she take a moment and distinguish between, I think you touched on it a little bit, I'd like you go maybe one layer deeper, which was paid visibility versus, like you said, being at a maybe an Ivy League on a certain school, and it's unpaid, but you still get the visibility because you're building the super fan, which becomes the university. I think that's the connection you want to make. But for those sitting at home that are watching right now, here's the question directly. Number one, the the advantages of an unpaid gig. That means you showed up, you weren't paid to be there, but you still were able to get your message and teach or speak at a college or university. Versus the paid one, and why should folks still spend time on the unpaid gig? And I think it's important, but I want to get your view of the world.
I think that that's a question that a lot of speakers have about the paid market versus the unpaid market. So, just for clarity, just to say, before we bring anybody on our tour, we pre-shop them. We have like an incubator process that we do. Generally, once a quarter, we'll do an incubator. And our incubator process is our selection process. It's almost like our audition process where we get to hear each of the speaker stories, and we spend a week with each of the speakers virtually to see what type of pitch they will be bringing to the college and university stage. We record them during that incubator, and then we pre-shop them to make sure that before we ever bring them onto our tour, because we do a tour every year, we do a college and university tour every year. But before we ever bring them onto our tour, we make sure that we have at least, one college or university that has tentatively said yes, right? So we make sure that everybody that's on our college and university circuit is getting paid, right? Everybody gets paid. And we generally have, a 12 to 18 month commitment to be able to work with us. And after that 12 to 18 months, then we'll evaluate it to see if we are going to continue the relationship. So every one of our speakers are paid in some form. So they're not just doing all free gigs. However, there are some gigs that we use strategically in order to be able to use as leverage for other opportunities. So for example, we book colleges and universities all around the world, not even just in the United States. We book colleges and universities internationally as well. However, Ivy League universities, a lot of times they're not going to pay, right? And when I say Ivy League universities, I mean those eight, major universities that everybody, considers the elite of the elite. Unless you're Michelle Obama, or Barbara Cochran, or Hillary Clinton, or something to that degree, a lot of times they're not going to dish out a big check to you. But having the credibility behind being that Harvard lecturer or that Columbia lecturer, or that Yale lecturer, that's what sets you up and can give us leverage to be able to talk to these other colleges and universities around the country about being able to pay you $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a gig, because now we have the credibility to say that, hey, Sarah is a Harvard lecturer, but we would like to bring her to your college so that she can share with you the same things that she shared with Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, right? So that gives us the leverage to be able to go to some of these other colleges and universities and to be able to get more money exponentially from that experience. For example, Simon Sinek, he did a lecture at Columbia, before he got his $98,000 no bid contract with the government, and it was his lecture at Columbia that set him up to be able to get that 98,000 no bid contract.
Wow. And I love how you shared the case study for us, by the way. That's super incredible. Thanks a lot for giving us the backstory, ladies and gentlemen, for those folks that are listening right now. Before we get into maybe challenges, what do you enjoy most about what you're doing now? I mean, you seem to light up. You seem the fire coming out of you. You're like, yeah, I might be a spoken poet, a spoken word. Yeah, I've done the tour, but this is my jam. What do you enjoy most about it?
It is my jam.
I can tell.
It is my jam. I tell you, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been in this industry for about 25 years, and I know I may look like I'm 25 years old, but
For sure.
I've been doing this literally for 25 years, and I absolutely loved it. When I first got into law, as an attorney, a lot of times you start to feel like, oh, well, maybe, what I was doing before I was an attorney, maybe that was for kids, maybe I'm too sophisticated to be trying to speak on stages anymore, and I should just be in the courtroom. And I was so miserable in the beginning of my legal career, just trying to focus on the courtroom all the time. And when I first started out my career in law, I focused primarily on business and bankruptcy. Right now, a lot of our clients were still entertainers because I came from the entertainment background, so I had connections in the entertainment industry. But it was still primarily business and bankruptcy. And what I found a lot of times is that we were able to see entrepreneurs and small businesses from the time that they started their business in the very beginning, when they were super, super excited and they're like, oh my God, this is going to be great, to the time that they ended when they were filing chapter 7s and chapter 11s and chapter 13s, or they were suing somebody, or they were fighting, because they weren't getting paid, or maybe they didn't have the money to pay somebody else. And what I realized about law is that law was very reactive. It was very reactive. So they really couldn't help a lot of small businesses until the problems became big problems. But a lot of the problems that entrepreneurs and small businesses have, they're not necessarily legal problems in the beginning. But coming from the legal perspective, I couldn't really do anything in the beginning until it became a court situation. And because of my passion around business and my passion around speaking, I wanted to be able to help small businesses before they were filing for bankruptcy and trying to close down. So in 2015, I transitioned my law firm into a business architecture firm so that I could design it exactly the way that I wanted to around speakers and entertainers and artists. And those are the people that really, they light my fire. I get excited about being around them, right? I get excited because they have that energy. They love what they do. They're passionate. It's not just about a dollar for them. And I get to share my passion as well because I still love being out there. I still love being out there. And it wasn't until I stopped resisting, the fact that I was an entertainer and a speaker and an artist first, and those are the constituencies that really, really need my help because I've been on the beginning end and I've been on the end, on the end of it. I've been on stages that had over, 1 million people on those stages. I've been in relationships with a lot of big name politicians and judges and entertainers. So I had a lot of insight, even as an attorney, I had insight that a lot of other attorneys didn't even have. So being able to access, the people that I love and work for them the way that I want to work for them, and to be able to give them the resources that they need before they're being sued or before they're closing down, that makes me excited. That makes me absolutely excited. That's my passion. That is my gem. You were right on that, Che.
Yeah, I love it, by the way. And it's a perfect transition to a segment that we have here called Today is My January 1st. Now, for those folks who tune in every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you know what I'm about to do. You can even say those magical words with me. Today is my January 1st. Happy New Year to you. For all the other folks who tune in for the very first time, welcome to the Happy Entrepreneur Show family. Today is my January 1st is our personal mantra. It represents a fresh start. It represents a do-over. It means our past, no matter how dark and gloomy that past is or how bright and sunny that past has been, the past no longer equals the future. And so the question for you on the other side as you're listening right now is, when you hear those words, today is my January 1st, what do you hear? What do you hear? And then number two, what was maybe a time there was a setback in your life or there was a challenge? Maybe her life's been perfect, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. She's done all this cool stuff. But maybe there was a time that there was a setback. And how did you bounce back from it?
That's a heavy question. Today is my January 1st. Every day is my January 1st. That's absolutely true. So a lot of times when I'm doing interviews and podcasts similar to this, a lot of times they like to focus on, my legal background or my background. I used to also work for the National Organization for Women, the largest women's organization in the world. Or they might focus on my background as a criminal attorney because I did some criminal law for a while, or even, in business management and business architecture. But to be very honest, my story didn't really start out like that. My story really, to be honest, started out in back alleys and corner blocks, right? From the age of 12 to 19 years old, I was a sex worker. And when I say that I was a sex worker, I mean that I was walking, to trailer parks in the middle of the night, every night, looking for my next client that I could have sex with, in exchange for money. And later on in my life, when I felt like, okay, I wanted to do something different, especially when I started to transition into law, I felt like I had to hide this. I felt like that if people knew what my history was, if they knew what my background was, that they were not going to accept me. So I created this vanilla coded version of myself to appease the world, right? And I tried to imitate all of my vanilla and clear, counterparts in the world, and pretended like, I had always been this perfect image of an attorney, right? And in the beginning, to be very honest, especially when I was going through attorney regulation, attorney regulation was very resistant to allowing me to practice. They were like, you've been in sex work, this is a criminal offense. You have, participated in immoral activities, and we don't think that you would be a good candidate to be able to practice law. And they literally told me, no, 999 times. They told me no. They told me no. They told me no. And I had to learn, in my journey, that no is not defined by anybody else in my life. No just means not now. And I had to keep going back over and over and over again to let them know, that, yes, I have this history. And I wasn't always honest about my history in the beginning. I was embarrassed about it. If somebody asked me about it, I would run from the question. But when I had to confront attorney regulation, I had to get comfortable with who I was and what my past involved. And that was one of the biggest journeys that I had to overcome in my life. One of the biggest obstacles I had to overcome in my life. And I think I got that from, my uncle. I had an uncle. My uncle name was Ronald Sims, and we called him Uncle Run. And just to give you a little bit more information about me, I grew up with a lot of drug addicts and drug dealers, a lot of them. So almost everybody in my family was addicted to crack cocaine, because the 80s kind of, infiltrated our communities at that time. So my Uncle Runt he was addicted to crack cocaine, but my Uncle Runt was called the Meat Man. He was the Meat Man. And the Meat Man was the person that he would go to different people's house, and he was like, hey, I got some ribeye steaks. I got this, what you want? And he would he would literally sell it to whoever he was talking to for like 25% of the price that you could get it at the grocery store. We don't know where it came from. I have no idea, right? But he would sell it for like 25%. Right, of what you could get it at the grocery store. And everybody knew that when he came to their house, that not only did he have all the groceries that they needed for a lot of families, that, even food stamps wasn't enough for them, right? Not only did he have all the groceries, but he could get anything else that they needed. They'd be like, hey, my daughter's birthday is next weekend. I need to get a bike, and I can't afford to get her one. Do you know anybody that got a bike? And he'd be like, give me 1 minute. I'm gonna go get you a bike, And then they'd be like, hey, my son, he looking for an Xbox. You know where I can get an Xbox? He'd be like, hold up, I'm gonna give you an Xbox, And they could say something that's crazy, like, I need a new heart transplant. He'd be like, hold up, I'm gonna find somebody for you. Like, he was always willing to say yes. And I learned that from him, just from having the exposure and seeing it all the time, to always be willing to say yes. So when an opportunity come up, I had to always be willing to say yes. On top of being willing to say yes, I had to be not afraid of hearing no, because there were so many people that would also tell my uncle no, and he would come back over and over and over and over again. So he would come to them, and he'd be like, hey, can you give me $5? And they'd be like, no, I ain't got $5. And he would come back the next day, right? And he'd be like, hey, can you give me $5? And they'd be like, I just told you yesterday, no, I ain't got $5. And he would come back the next day like they ain't never said no. He'd be like, look, you got $5. What can I do? Can I wash your car? I get $5. And they'd be like, man, look, here's the $5. Take the $5. This is $5, right? And no matter what, no matter how many times people told him no, he never got discouraged. He never stopped. He kept going. He wasn't worried about anybody trying to judge him. He wasn't worried about anybody, trying to control his life. He still went after what that he wanted. He just learned that he had to frame the offer in a different way. Right. So I learned also, just from watching my uncle run, I learned to never be afraid of the no. And that when people tell you no, maybe I just need to reframe my offer in a different way for you. Right. And then always be willing to take risk and to say yes. Right. That's what helped me. And that's what helped me with attorney regulation as well.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being so authentic. Thanks for being transparent, by the way. As we're coming down the home stretch, I'm curious, your firm, your agency, what type of clients are you looking to work with these days? Might be a number of folks that are wondering, okay, do I have to be a speaker? Do I have to be an NSA speaker? Is my message clean enough, good enough? So you talked a little bit about how you guys work with folks pre coming in, but take a moment if you would. And folks, if you're at home and you're thinking, well, Shay, and let me frame the conversation for you if I can. Nselaa, a number of our clients are dualpreneurs. They work a full-time job and they're a full-time entrepreneur. And some of them take care of their families. Some of them take care of a husband or a wife, or they have kids, or they're involved in their community, and they've got a lot going on. But speaking and using this as a platform is really appealing to them. You might be wondering what type of clients that you work with, and if you could share that, and then we'll get to how folks can best connect with you in just a second.
A lot of people ask us that as well, especially because when they hear scholar, because we specialize in turning peak performance entrepreneurs into scholars, right? So when they hear scholar, the first thing they say is they're like, I'm not a scholar, right? They're like, I've never been to college. I don't have a college degree. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to Yale. I didn't go to Princeton. They was like, oh, I'm just starting out, right? We work with speakers from the beginning to the end. So whether you are just starting out or you've been speaking for 10, 20, 30 years, we are able to work with them in their business. We do an audition process, but it's not necessarily based on whether they have been speaking for a significant amount of time or whether they are a part of any speakers association. In fact, a lot of times what I have found is that some of the speakers that are best on these college and university circuits are speakers that have never spoken before. This is their first time getting on a large stage with a lot of people. And the reason that is because when you've had speakers that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, sometimes they're a little bit resistant to the techniques that we're going to teach them in order to be able to find their super fans, right? On the college and university stage, they're used to just doing a lecture, standing behind a podium and saying, this is what I'm going to teach you today. And because I've been doing this for so long, I've been doing it for 25 years, I communicate with the students and the directors and the advisors on a daily basis. I know what they want, right? And they're constantly telling us, hey, we don't want somebody that's going to come in here and imitate our professors. We already have professors. We go to class every day. We want something a little bit different. So one of the things that we specialize in is that we're bringing in speakers to the colleges and universities that are educational and entertaining at the same time, right? So they know that they can trust us because we're not going to bring in somebody that that is going to bore the hell out of them, or that's going to stand behind a podium, and lecture. And anybody can become that entertaining and educational speaker, but they have to be willing to listen, and they have to be willing to get coached as well. So it's not about the amount of time that you've been a speaker, and it's not about how many influencers you already have, or how many followers you have, or how much experience you have. It's more so about the person's willingness to be vulnerable, their willingness to be coached, their willingness to tell their authentic story, because the students don't want to hear these stories of how everything was perfect in your life and this is how you got to where you got to go, right? So being willing to be vulnerable, tell the real story, and then also be a peak performance entrepreneur. That's important. That means that you have to be willing to do the work, because there's going to be work for the next 12 to 18 months. Both of us going to be doing work. If you pulling, I'm a push, right? If you push, I'm a pull, but we both going to do work here. I'm not into the habit of working with speakers that don't want to work for themselves. So we're going to be working together. So the biggest element is being willing to be vulnerable and be willing to put in the work.
And so for folks that are like, Shay, I'm there. I'm all in. I love what I'm hearing. I love to explore the possibility. It makes sense and sense. Come on, somebody. Sense and sense. And you're leaning forward. Might be wondering, okay, how can folks, and here's the question, how can folks best connect with you over and beyond this conversation that we're having right now? Where should they go to get more information and even maybe start the process?
Sure. So you can always go to the website, www.mini2mogul.com, MINI, M like mother. I'm going to start that over. M like mother, so that I'm saying MIN like no, I like mini, like miniature, mini, to TO, mogul, mini to mogul, MOGUL.com, mini2mogul.com. If you go to www.mini2mogul.com, then you can see our call for speakers there and you can apply. But let me tell you a back door to be able to get access to when we have an opening. So we do a tour once a year, right? We do a tour once a year, but occasionally we'll have speakers that will fall off for whatever the reason may be. Sometimes it's job obligations, sometimes it's family obligations, sometimes they can't perform in a gig that we have for them. So occasionally we have openings throughout the year. So if you want to find out about specific openings that we have throughout the year, you can text us, right? And if you text this number, what will happen is we'll tell you if we have an opening, and then you'll be able to apply immediately for that opening. And the text number, if you're in the United States, the text number is 404-282-7122. 404-282-7122. 404-282-7122. And if you're international, then you can reach us on WhatsApp, right? Because I know that a lot of our clients are international. We have people from all over the world: Australia, New England, South Africa, Kenya. We have clients in Asia. We have so many clients in all different parts of the world. So if you're international and you need to reach us on WhatsApp, then you can reach us at 404-250-2811. 404-250-2811. 404-250-2811. And either one of those numbers, you can text the word speaker, and then we will let you know if we have openings available, and you'll be able to apply immediately.
Well, let me say once again, you got a couple ways to go. She had the number to text, and she started with a website as well, which was mini2mogul.com. MINITO mogul MOGUL.com. I tested the site, ladies and gentlemen. It does work. Sometimes these sites don't work, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not the person's problem. There's tech problems, by the way. But it does work, by the way. So you can head over there right now and you can take that moment and do that. Let me first say thanks so much for being on the Happy Entrepreneur Show. I appreciate it. Can't wait to have you back.
Thank you. I can't wait to be back. Thank you, Jay.
And thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching, by the way. We appreciate you because without you, there is no show. And I never get tired of reminding you every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that, as corny as it may sound, that you are really amazing. You've got a superpower down there. You're a unique individual and you've got so much potential inside you. It's going to bloom out. And that no matter what's going on right now, whether life is treating you so well or you've landed on your back and you got to get up, I believe today is your January 1st. And because of just that one reason alone, I believe your best is still yet to come. Your best is yet to come. Your best is yet to come. With that being said, my name, it hasn't changed. It's still Che Brown, the Happy Entrepreneur. Make it a great day, everyone. We out. Thanks a lot, everyone. Peace. I'll see you on the other side. Bye.